Here's what I want to point out. Going back to the conversation about energy and all that, I have this article from almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's from Yahoo News. Actually, it's from the National Review. AOC's chief of staff admits the Green New Deal is not about climate change.
Yeah.
This is important context. I know it's an old story, but considering the conversation happening around Texas right now. So for those of you that are watching, if you get someone who says, see, AOC says this is why we need a Green New Deal. Okay. All right. That's the argument. Show them this clip. Here's what we have. Saikat Chakrabarti, AOC's former chief of staff, said that addressing climate change was not Ocasio-Cortez's top priority in proposing the Green New Deal during a meeting with Washington Governor Jay Inslee. Quote, the interesting thing about the Green New Deal is it wasn't originally a climate thing at all. This is what Chakrabarti said to Inslee's climate director, Sam Ricketts. He said, do you guys think of it as a climate thing? Because we really think of it as a how do you change the entire economy thing. The Green New Deal proposed earlier this year by Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey would transition the U.S. economy entirely away from fossil fuels within 10 years, while simultaneously providing a federal jobs and healthcare guarantee. It would also, according to its proponents, advance social, economic, racial, regional, and gender-based justice and equality in cooperative and public ownership. All told, the proposal will cost up to $93 trillion in new government spending over 10 years. Yada, yada. We get it. Okay. To put it simply, let me ask you a question. A rhetorical question. I'll just reframe it, actually. If someone came to me and said, do you think we should allocate taxpayer funds towards investing in new energy technologies in an effort to offset carbon emissions? I would say yes. If someone says, so all of a sudden you say yes, they say, boom, you support the Green New Deal. Okay, all right, sounds good to me. And that's what they asked people. What they did not ask them was the actual contents of the Green New Deal. Do you support the largest transfer of power to the government, economic power and economic control to the government, in order to ensure racial and gender-based equity and guaranteed housing and healthcare? That has nothing to do with the environment. Yeah. That's going to dramatically drop the amount of people who agree with that. And last point, Chakrabarti said it was about changing the economy. It's a new deal with green just jammed in there to use environmentalism as a manipulation. Because when I read that bill, I was looking for a legitimate resolution that said, we're going to allocate X amount of funds towards fusion. We're going to allocate X amount of funds towards nuclear development, which I knew they would never do. And we're going to allocate X amount of funds towards carbon capture. And I'd be like, let's technology. It's awesome, man. Let's fund technology. They didn't. They said, we're going to guarantee healthcare to people of color. And I'm like, okay.
How about the line, we're going to guarantee income for those unwilling to work? You must have read that and said, wow.
And they had to remove that in panic and then try and deny it.
Just imagine the stupidity of someone who says we are going to get off fossil fuels in 10 years. Someone who says that just literally doesn't know how the world works.
Right.
It just doesn't understand
Anytime you say,
how the
like,
world
would
works.
you support this outcome? That's moronic. Like, would you support Daniel winning the race?
Yeah, sure.
Well, in that case, let me take any means necessary to make it happen. Thank you. That's basically the Green New Deal.
So then kill the three of them, and then I win.
Yeah, well, then you automatically you will win.
So Daniel, look around the room. Is there anything in this room that was created without fossil fuels?
It's not possible. Or if it doesn't contain a fossil fuel, it was only created at a price point that you could afford to put it in this room because fossil fuel made it. Right. So the wood that was milled, you could afford to buy because it was, the trees were harvested, they were transported, they were cut. They were brought to your Home Depot, all at a price point you could afford. And that's what's beautiful about the free market system. It takes the most amount of goods and lowers it to the lowest cost imaginable. And just on a quick little note, right, not to be political, but the last 4 years, Trump is an oil guy. He supports big oil. Boy, for a guy who supports big oil prices were pretty damn low, right? The oil companies want to make profit off of volume. Oil was at, even before COVID, oil prices were low because they were producing more of it. The industry, the free market, wants to produce more things at a lower price point because more people can buy it.
So let's talk about price point.
And that's good.
There's this story from way back when. One man's nearly impossible quest to make a toaster from scratch.
Yeah. Years ago.
Now, what does it mean from scratch? I'm not talking about, and they mentioned this in the article, a guy going to Radio Shack or Home Depot, whatever, as you buy components, saying, I need some wire, I need some metal. No. He literally wanted to make every single part of it, the springs, everything from the ground up. Guess what? He could not do it. The one thing he couldn't do was plastic. I watched this video on it. He couldn't do plastic, so he ended up mining the plastic. He went and found some and then melted it down. And all in all, the toaster worked for, I think, about 20 seconds before it broke. Toasters cost what, $10?
Yeah.
For the average person working at McDonald's, takes you about an hour. Well, after taxes, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then you get a toaster this guy could not make. The fact that we have this massive industry, all of it, 190-something% fueled by fossil fuels, means that you can have these things people cannot make on their own.
Yeah.
Not only, so the interesting thing about it was plastics. So he couldn't make it if he wanted to. He could do the metal, he could do everything else, but he couldn't actually make the plastic, which is funny because, fossil fuel based for the most part, petrochemicals and things like that. Think about, you brought this up before the show, ham sandwiches.
Yeah.
You want to tell the ham sandwich story?
Yeah, it was similar to that, and I have to find, I don't remember where I read it, but it was a guy who, I forget where it was, a guy who wanted to make a ham sandwich. Same idea though. Every component he wanted to make. He wanted to grow the wheat to make the bread. He wanted to grow the pig to make the ham. It took him years, and it cost him, I think the price point was like $1,000, where he laughed and said, I can go to the store and buy this ham sandwich for $4, or I could make it on my own, and it's $1,000 and years to make it happen. Again, the beauty of the free market.
I recently made, with some friends from scratch, some General Tso's chicken.
Oh.
And I was looking at the ingredients and I was like, the amount of things that had to be pulled together to make this would have been like like the Manhattan Project. Yeah. Like 2,000 years ago, if you gave them that recipe, they'd be like, what? Yeah. We have to get all of these things to make this? That's not possible.
And what amazes me about the AOCs of the world, of the haughtiness sometimes of our elite, is the average person in America right now, the average person has the greatest quality of life in the history of mankind. You find people who don't make an awful lot of money who will say things like, oh, I really like craft beer and I like to get my craft beer from this place. A generation ago, we all drank, our parents, my parents, your grandparents, they drank Schlitz, right? Because that's what was available. And now it's
you ragging on Schlitz?
No, I'm just saying there were 4 or 5 brands and that was it. And now we find people who because we have created such prosperity, and that comes from an abundance of energy. To go back to the very first question, why is there a food shortage in Texas? There's an energy shortage. Where is there the most poverty in the world where there's no energy? Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia. Where is there the most pollution and despair and the worst quality of life? The same countries. Energy gives us prosperity. It gives us and if Americans are willing to compromise their quality of life for the environment, then I'm not going to stop them from doing it. But they need to know that is what is on the line. And to say we're going to have a Green New Deal, but we're going to continue with all of this is just a lie.
There's a balance, because I went to South America, to Iquitos in northeast Peru, which is like the last big city before you get into the jungle. And Honda basically got their tentacles in Iquitos and started selling them these tuk-tuks, these like 3-wheel cars, and basically brand them all Honda. And they use like gas engines, all of them. So there's like thousands, tens and hundreds of thousands of these just pouring black smoke into the air. It smells disgusting. It's also considered the dirtiest city on the planet. That's because it's just all running off gas with no carbon capture taken into consideration. So we need to learn how to reuse it.
Absolutely, we need a balance. And I would argue that we have allowed ourselves to have this binary mentality. We either love the earth or we want to pollute it with fossil fuels. And I think they go hand in hand. I look at this country, which is a very big fossil fuel consumer, and our air, our water quality, we are not a dirty country. Could we be cleaner? Of course we could be cleaner, right? I don't want to become this city in Peru, did you say?
Yeah, Iquitos.
I don't want to become that. But we're not there. And so, like we said with the straw ban, we are chastising ourselves and compromising our quality of life for the sins committed by other countries, for the pollution created by China, for the pollution created by Indonesia and India. When are we going to stand up and say, you know what, we don't throw... I grew up in Rockaway, as I was saying earlier, on the beach. I've been to lots of different beaches in this country. I've never seen plastic strewn all over the place. We don't pollute our oceans in America. Why are we culpable? Because Greta Thunberg, you pronounce it differently than I do, tells us, well, it's our fault there's plastic in the ocean.
Thunberg?
Yeah, I think the H is silent.
Is it? I'm pretty sure it's Thunberg.
I'm tired of us having to compromise our quality of life for the sins committed by other countries,
crazy
because
thing
there
is-
are countries committing great sins against the environment.
We're going to find out that the carbon dioxide in the air is valuable, like a natural resource to reuse, and the plastic in the ocean is insanely valuable when you can melt it down or break it down with fungus and bacteria to turn it into sugar and reuse it. It's going to be worth its weight in gold. So if China wants to throw it into the ocean so that we can recapture it, I'm totally into it. Just give us 10 or 15 years.
Carbon capture technology, converting the carbon in the air to graphene, like you were mentioning, I think is going to become lucrative.
Yeah.
And I think then we're going to have an inverse problem where it's like too much carbon is being taken.
And the plants will be suffering. So we're going to need to balance out that.
Yep.
It's true. We can't mine it all out of the air.
Graphene has long been hailed as this wonder material that's going to revolutionize everything. Superconductor materials. What is it? Like you crisscross it, it becomes a superconductor.
Oh,
It
yeah.
So
twist it. And,
something like that. Like we were talking about it. And there's a lot of amazing properties. It's like super strong. Well, you need carbon for that. And you mentioned this earlier in the show that what they're going to capture it from the air to make graphene.
Graphene is pure carbon. So you get the carbon dioxide out of the air and you put it on palladium, apparently, the same metal that you use for cold fusion, the palladium. It's incredible metal, by the way. And I didn't get through the article, but the process, I mentioned the article earlier.
In 50 to 100 years when they're like, global cooling catastrophe because too much carbon is being extracted by these graphene manufacturing plants.
I'm sure they'll find something to be, there's articles going back to the 70s, obviously, for the global cooling. My favorite article of all, which is recirculated a lot, is the UN report of 1989 saying we had 10 years to fix climate change. And if not, the Maldives would be underwater within 30 years.
What about the 70s, the global cooling crisis?
Yeah, exactly. But I also think, like I said earlier, I don't trust the press, and I also don't like government. And my whole life I've been told between killer bees and swine flu and bird flu and this pandemic, everything's going to kill me every 5 seconds. We're always told we're going to die.
This whole slow death thing I think is a fear thing because we're coming out of the last ice age right now. That's the research shows. We're in a glaciation period where everything's melting. All the ice caps are going to melt back to normal. We're out of the ice age. And the real fear is an asteroid impact and a massive global flood, not a slow raise in the sea level. It doesn't happen like that. It happens in jolts and jerks. So we got to prevent and be prepared for that kind of thing.
Well, we need to understand a lot of things. It's not always so strongly on one side that there's going to be a solution on. There are some legitimate issues that we do need to take care of, especially with the environment, especially with China, especially with other third world developing countries, especially things that we could also do better, and we should strive to do better, but we're not going to be doing better when we're going to be punishing people for living their lives and doing it radically and listening to people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that literally said the world will end in 12 years if climate change is not addressed.
And I called my organization Power the Future for a reason, because I do believe our future is better and brighter and has fewer emissions, et cetera, et cetera. But the geniuses who are thinking about this and the conversations we're having, the people who are going to laboratories and factories and experimenting are using conventional energy. And if we cripple our conventional energy now, we are crippling our future. Those people have to drive, they have to turn on lights, they have to run big machines. So let's not punish ourselves now for the hope of a better tomorrow.
You know who's not crippling their energy?
China.
That's right.
Look at the coal plants they're building. Nor is Russia. Yep. Right? If anything, Russia is laughing itself silly.
So what you're saying is that Greta Thunberg is working for the Russians to hurt America?
I am saying that that this is Newtonian, and there is always an opposite effect. And by punishing American fossil fuels, other people are going to prosper. Look, there are only geology is such that only certain countries have oil and gas. I wish they were all America and Canada, because we're great. But the other ones are the Saudis, the Omanis, the Yemenis, the Russians. They're not the Venezuelans. They're not the greatest regimes on earth.
I heard a really horrifying point.
The Iranians.
I don't remember who said it. It may have been Mike Cernovich. He said something like, or someone said, if you think the Middle East is destabilized now, wait until we discontinue use of fossil fuels and then see what happens. What little is helping to stabilize that area is the desire for profit in industry and the access to this resource. Once no one cares about that anymore, then fighting is going to be for just unfettered, uncontrolled.
Yeah.
Although, like you said, that pipeline is all about moving fossil fuels. So if we didn't need it, we may not have to fight over that.
Fighting would be very different, I'd imagine. Yeah. Yeah, they don't want to pay the high prices to Russia anymore. So they want this pipeline built, and it's resulting in chaos.
I've been thinking about, if we were to melt all the ice, the countries that would massively profit are Canada, Russia. I don't know how, does China, is it super far north up? where
China?
Lots of
No.
ice.
Russia is to the north.
more
Yeah,
like
so it's Russia.
Mongolia.
It's
Yeah,
Russia.
Russia will be
Russia and
massive,
Canada.
make massive amounts of money when all that ice is gone in Siberia and up there.
And they already want to start drilling, and so there's now
Canada and Greenland is going to be fascinating with no ice.
And we
Well-
almost bought it, right? Our last president tried to buy it for I
You
forget
wanted to
the
put that casino in there, and
I forget the
Yes.
price tag. It wasn't much. We all could have done a PayPal, a GoFundMe, and
who owns Greenland? Is it
Denmark.
Denmark? Denmark.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny because Denmark's like pretty tiny, like in Europe, but like they have Greenland. It's massive. It's a whole lot of
Fine
ice,
with
though.
it.
I will say this: the ice on Greenland is ice that is not displacing water. So they say when that melts, it will change the salinity levels, the flow, and potentially the water, the ocean levels themselves.
Yeah, it
But
melts on the inside, and then it breaks and floods and causes like a dead zone of lack of salt water, all this fresh water.
Well,
in the
my
ocean.
question is like, why are these ultra elites buying beachfront properties? No, but it's funny, but like, someone sent me a video where a guy said that he could debunk climate change with one simple fact, and then he brought up that some global elite, like I don't know who it was, bought Florida beachfront property, and he said, how is that possible? That you have these people saying all this is going to happen, and they just made a 30-year investment on waterfront property. He said, there's another video someone sent me where a guy talks about how if this was true, no bank would issue a loan to anyone buying or building on beachfronts. But they don't care.
Yeah.
Why is that?
But
But just to finish this, the argument from the left is just simply because people don't care.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Or they don't believe, because even as you have now called him our Lord and Savior, Bill Gates, in his CNN interview on Sunday said, we have 30 years to fix this problem. Well, AOC 2 years ago said we had 10 years. At the presidential debates, the Democrat primaries, Andrew Yang said we have no time. It's already here. We should start moving people to higher ground. Remember that line?
Yeah.
And I was like, the Floridians were like, "Oh boy, pack your bags, kids. I guess we're moving somewhere, right?" So they know that this timeline is a joke. Bill Gates says 30
Right.
years. AOC says 8.
The legitimate scientists, though, not the politicians, not the politicos or the people trying to make money, will tell you it's a lot longer than that, right? So there's a meteorologist who frequently would debunk AOC, saying climate change and carbon emissions, they're serious problems.
Yeah.
We need to solve for these problems. 10 years, that's not true.
Yeah.
These people are just, trying to push you and scare you.
And what's going to happen in, say, it's 50 years? Are we going to be as warm as we were in the 1640s when England had very prosperous vineyards, right? We're going to be warmer. Well, we were warmer during the height of the Renaissance. Were we all dying? Were we all underwater? You know what I mean? Like we came out of the Black Plague. And so, I don't know what the consequences of global warming are. I just hear it's catastrophe. All I know is that beneath the permafrost of Greenland are an awful lot of trees. And all I know is that when you go through the sands of Saudi Arabia, there's an awful lot of seashells. Right? I mean,
That's ocean sand from the last global flood.
So we had nothing to do with that. I think it's very hard to think that we have something to do with what's happening now.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.